Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Sales. If you're looking for actionable insights and real-world tools to turbocharge your sales starting tomorrow, well, you're in the right place. Your host, Kay Miller, earned the affectionate nickname Muffler Mama when she sold more automotive mufflers than anyone else in the world. In this podcast, Kay will talk to another superstar woman in sales as they reveal uncopyable strategies you can use to rack up more leads, snag dream clients, and take your sales numbers through the roof. Stay tuned and get ready to make more sales and how about this? More money.
My guest today is Fiona Gellatly, and Fiona is a senior sales executive at Highnote, which is an embedded payments platform. Fiona is a seasoned marketing and sales executive with 17 years of experience in financial technology, including payments, lending, card payments, and a lot more, which you're going to tell us about, right, Fiona?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fiona, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Fiona, I have read your industry has been described, I should say, as highly complex and technical. So I would like to start out and have you explain what do you do and who your customers are and how you serve them.
Sure. Absolutely. So I'm in the payments industry, which, as you mentioned, encompasses many things. So it could be, card payments, issuing card payments. It could be lending. It could be fraud solutions that go along with payments. The whole payments ecosystem, if you think about it from your consumer experiences or potentially from a commercial experience. And so what I do is I sell technology that enables companies to, make great customer experiences for their customers. It could help them with, optimizing operations, business automation, maybe in the, specialty finance, leasing industry. So really selling the technical solution that is, when you think about it, mission critical for some businesses to operate. They're choosing their platform. It has to have all the bells and whistles that they're looking for. And you're really not selling a, widget, so to speak. You're selling an entire solution. So it can be very consultative. You really need to understand what people are looking to achieve and how you can help solve those problems for them or opportunities, if you think about it that way too.
Okay. So do you contract with the company? Do they sign a certain, agreement for a period of time?
Yeah, it could be a enterprise platform, or it could be a SaaS model where you're paying for seats. So I work with customers like in the past, I worked with banks, selling them solutions like digital banking, lending solutions. Today I'm selling payment solutions using cards as the kind of the vehicle to move that money, if that makes sense, in both consumer and commercial. That's really what it comes down to is, we present our solution, we sign a contract, and then we implement the solution, whether it's software, or a platform, and, really help our customers grow and scale in what they're trying to achieve.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. I'm not totally clear on it, but I kind of get it. And I'm, like I said, it's a very specialized industry. And, I'd like to know your background and how you got into this, how you got into sales and then this particular industry. And we talked a little bit before the fact that it is a male dominated industry. So, talk to us.
So I started out with, a marketing background, and I was working for, one of the largest global hair care companies. I worked for a consumer marketing, agency. And when I was at the global retail company or hair care company, stored value gift cards were just coming on the scene. And we felt like it was a huge opportunity for, to grab more market share, increase our spend at the salons by offering gift cards. And so I worked on one of the more brands that was retail focused. And so the company came to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in launching gift cards for our company?" And I was like, "Well, I really know nothing about it, but sure, I'm always up for a challenge." And that's really how that was the time period where I made that transition from marketing into sales. I was starting to negotiate placement of those gift cards outside of our brand's four walls and into other brands wall, like if you go to a Target or a Costco and you see gift cards. And I was negotiating a channel contract. And at the end of the contract, the guy, who was one of my favorite bosses to this day, was like, I really am impressed with you during the sales process. You were a tough negotiator. Would you like to come join the team? And so that's really where I launched into payments and started to really focus on more of a sales career. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. But it's funny to think back to when gift cards were new. It seems like they've been around forever. But that's right. It really, things are changing so fast. And of course, now with everything going on, social media, AI, everybody has a podcast. I am finding so, things are changing so quickly. So that does help me understand where it all started. So yes, as a way for businesses to grow, make more sales. And I don't know if it's true. I'm going to ask you. I've heard that a lot of people, and gift cards are probably different now, but they would never spend that money.
Well, yep, a lot of them get lost in the corners of a desk or in a car. But, there's this escheatment laws against, because at first the companies were just, keeping the money, but now there's regulation in place to protect the consumer. And so, yeah, that did happen in the past, but it doesn't happen anymore. So, which is a good thing. But, that's really where I started to get into technology as well. And, growing up, that was the last thing I thought I'd ever be in. I, didn't like all the maps and scientists. I did for sciences. I was, much better suited in like the English and social studies and, things of those natures. So making a leap from going into retail, which I thought I would be in forever, into more of a complex technology that I'm selling today, I've sold in the past. It was a little intimidating, but, I learned a couple of things along the way that really helped me get comfortable in a highly technical sale. Both from what is my personal experience with, financial tools today, and I always have been successful in relating that back to what I'm selling versus how a consumer uses things, or maybe it's a corporation as well. But that's really helped me understand how it works. To be successful in technology sales, the biggest piece of advice that I received early on was get in there and know the product. You have to know the product, even if you don't have a technical background. And so, when I start a new role at a new company, one of my top priorities is to dig into the product and what it can do and help our customers. And that's one thing that I really recommend for anyone going into technical sales, especially a female. Dive into the product, dig into it, run a demo if you have the opportunity to do that. And that's how you can really learn the technology at a faster pace.
I like that. And confidence and fear, overcoming fear is a huge issue for women and also the men who will admit it. Because sales is uncomfortable. I think, we grow up hearing don't talk to strangers, and then we get into a job that's what it's all about, is talking to strangers. And knowing your product is huge. That's a huge confidence builder. The better you know your product, of course, the better resource you can be. And I don't know if you have read my book or know my Muffler Mama story, but when I was selling exhaust systems, I went into a shop and spent a day there and learned to do that. So I totally agree that the more you know, the better salesperson you can be. And like you said, you even prepared for this interview. So I know preparation is huge. You mentioned a couple things that you discovered along the way that has helped you. And I'd love to know those. And so why don't we just start there? And I have maybe a follow-up question.
Yeah, no, I think, obviously the preparation and digging into the technology are things that I've learned along the way. I think for me, making that leap into, from a marketing and sales perspective early on, I was in a situation at a company where, I was taking on a bigger role, more of a sales retail role. So still kind of, on the line of marketing and sales, and which one should I really do? And, unfortunately, that company was not diverse and didn't support, more females in leadership roles. And so I made a tough decision to leave that organization because it just wasn't fun. And had an opportunity to take some time off. And so I hired a career coach. And I cannot tell you.
Okay, can you say that again? A coach, right?
Coach, yes.
Yes. What kind? Did you say a specific kind of coach?
This was a coach that focused on people that wanted to maybe transition into another area or another company or another industry. And so he really worked with me on what my goals were. And my goals were really about, should I still pursue marketing or should I just go into the deep end in sales and, be scared about meeting my quota and am I going to make money? And, I was recently divorced at that time and supporting 3 kids and it was scary, but, he went through, all my personal attributes. We did a lot of testing. We talked about, what kind of person I am and what I like to do. And, he pretty much predicted my career path to this day. He's like, you definitely should be in sales. You're very driven. You're very goal oriented. I can tell you've got tenacity and persistence. And, he said, I think you'll be really successful. And he said, you're a strong leader. You've got a lot of leadership because I've done both, sales leadership and individual contributor roles. And, he said, you're going to go down that leadership path because you're just a natural leader. He said, but I bet you later on in your career, you just go back to being an individual contributor, which is exactly where I am today.
That's so interesting. Well, good for him. He not only helped you, but he had a good read on who you are and your strengths. And of course, when you talk about being, a single mom supporting kids, sales is where the money is. You can, and, as good as you are, I mean, that is, there's no ceiling on that. There might be a glass ceiling, but there's not a ceiling on what you can earn in sales. So, great decision, especially since it fit your personality so well.
Yeah, and I that's one of the things I realized, sales not only fulfills me from a, personal, personal goals that I've set for myself. It really had, been in uncomfortable situations where I'm like, you can do this, Fiona. I've got a sign on you can't see it in here, but I have this sign that I found that I kind of words to live by for me. And it's, you can, you should, and when you're brave enough, you will. And so anytime I'm feeling a little uncomfortable or vulnerable, I just look up and I go, okay, you can do this. And, that's kind of I approached my sales career as, a little uncomfortable at the beginning. But then when I saw the potential that I had and the real results that I was able to achieve for not only my customers, but for myself, personally, financially, it's just really worked out for me. And I absolutely love it. I love the challenge every day. Can be really tough some days when, the sales aren't rolling in and then the next month you get one. And so never get too high, never get too low is what I try to tell myself all the time.
Right. Don't spend your commission check when it's a big one. You might need it next month, right? I love that little mantra, those words of encouragement. As I said, a lot of the women I've interviewed, they talk about mindset and they talk about the words you use, the language and the reinforcement. You have to be your own cheerleader a lot of times, even if you're on a sales team and it sounds like you've managed sales teams, but you're still an individual. This is almost like you're a mini entrepreneur. So yes, reinforcing those positives is really important. So let's talk, I know you said you're driven, you prepare, I'm sure you like the variety of sales. Sales is never boring, right? So, as we talk to our listeners who are women in sales, want to up their game, talk about what you feel like has helped you and what you would recommend for them.
Sure. So, there's been many things that I've done to up my game. I'm just very driven into being the best that I can be, whether it's what I put on every day that gives me the confidence to walk in a room or making sure I have that, technical credibility to help me be successful. In my line of work, there's a concept of, it's almost like a co-selling opportunity where, you have the business salesperson, but then you also have a technical salesperson. And so my role in the beginning is to make sure that I'm meeting with prospects that are going to be a good fit before I'll bring those resources in. But, and knowing enough to be credible in having those initial conversations from a technical perspective. I don't need to know everything, but I need to know enough to pull them in and make sure that I'm going to get that second conversation. I always look at things as that disciplined sales process. I'm not worrying about, getting the contract signed yet. I'm worried about, okay, your goal for this meeting is to get the next meeting. After that, I want my executives on the phone. Whatever it is think about a disciplined sales process and how you move that, I'm going to say, all across the field. How everyone says that, but just how do you move it forward every day? And so you're meeting the goal that you set for yourself, whether it's with one customer or just meeting your quota for the year.
Today's podcast is sponsored by the acclaimed book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets, How to Create an Unfair Advantage and Outsell Your Competition by Kay Miller. If you want to make more sales, you need to read this book. We'll even get you started with a free download of the first 2 chapters. Go to uncopyablesales.com/chapters to grab this offer right now.
I like a lot about what you said there. And one, of course, is finding the right customer. We call them your moose because you can waste so much time. You can talk to a lot of people and it doesn't get you anywhere. So you are finding the best customers, like you said, because you don't want to waste the time of your technical people. So that's a really good point. And we do, and we have the whole the uncopyable philosophy, this big umbrella of concepts like the moose. And one of them is the next step. I've heard so many people use the analogy of, dating and marriage. You don't ask someone to marry them on the first date. So it really is important. I think we want to jump ahead and get ahead of ourselves, make the sale. So the next step philosophy is something definitely that I believe in following. So I love that.
Well, I think, when you're younger, and I was guilty of this as a young person in sales, is, you don't always listen to, you're just trying to close it, right? And you have to really focus and listen to what I call the sirens. They can be good and bad. The siren could be a buying signal that, they're asking all the right things that make you feel comfortable that this deal is going to close. But you also have to listen to the sirens of, when was the last time I talked to that prospect? Who else are they talking to? I get really uncomfortable when there's quiet time because I know that something else is taking priority or they're talking to someone else. So, one of the things I really focus on is listening to those sirens, good or bad, so you can be really real about that opportunity for your company and who you're going to bring on. Makes sense?
Yes. Oh, it does. And a lot of that is intuition. Like you said, silence is not golden. I can even say that as a parent, silence isn't good. So, when your customer isn't communicating or responding, that's one of the challenges is getting creative, but also deciding, hey, maybe they're not really committed to this. So, it's a balancing act. Some people feel that women have more intuition and, women and men are different. We both face challenges, of course, but I do think even though not all of us are great listeners, it's something I have to really, focus on. But that intuitive part of the job is really important. So, what else would you tell? Yeah. What else have you learned that you could share with the listeners?
Gosh, I've learned so much. Honestly, I have learned a lot. I work with a lot of young women. Some of them are just personal relationships. Others are, more professional, like, internally at my company right now, Highnote, we have a mentoring program. So I'm mentoring a young woman there who's amazing. And I love working with her. And then I also, one of the other big pieces of advice I have for young women is, when you're in a male dominated industry like I am, financial technology, it is so important to build your network. And one of the things that's helped me be successful is joining women's industry groups. I know it can be extra work. I know that at certain times you just don't have the bandwidth, but I've always joined a women's group within my industry. When I was in the lending and leasing space, I joined the women's committee for the ELFA, which is the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association. Because that's where you're going to meet like-minded women who want the same success. You can, make deep connections and use them for a mentor or, hey, I'm looking for this job. But, that was something I didn't do early on and I regret that. But now I'm really, make a point of diving into that industry. I am, because it's very valuable from a potentially looking for a job or just resources to help you close a deal. Do you know this person? That's something that I'd highly recommend to young women getting into the space.
Yeah, I love that. And then, as I was reading about you, I know you're involved with Girls Who Sell, some other organizations online that I'm familiar with. And, I am older than you, but when I was one of few women in the two different male dominated industries, many of those women were not kind to me. They were not good. It was like, instead of growing the pie, we were competing with each other. And I think that has changed. And when I experienced that, I always vowed if I have the opportunity, when I have the opportunity, I want to be different. And in fact, my very first job, I graduated from college in 1982. The job market was crap. And the sister of my boyfriend at the time, she was a manufacturer's rep and she repped a bunch of different lines. And she actually, one thing, I didn't have experience. And of course, to get a job, you have to have experience. And so she allowed me to kind of babysit a couple of her lines so that I could say I had experience. And that was really a turning point. That made my career, one person. So, it's very gratifying. And like you said, it's not only the right thing to do, but it can definitely help you down the line. I did have a lot of male mentors. I still to this day, I'm surprised at how many men are really supporting me with this podcast, finding guests, listening to it, cheering me on. So it is both women and men. We need those relationships in that network. So very important point.
Something that I, recently heard that struck me and, has given me something else to focus on, because I do a lot of mentoring. Unfortunately, my mentors were men and they were great, but I never had a female mentor in my life. It was like, I could probably count 3 men that I considered mentors. One that I work with today. And so for me to be able to give back, my passion is all about young women intentionally getting into sales. I fell into it unintentionally and I love it and I will never get out of sales. But, I don't think a lot of young women think about it as an opportunity that can be very, very giving personally and also financially. And so my focus in mentoring young women is helping them get comfortable in financial technology if that's the route they want to go and be comfortable with, yes, you can do this. And part of that is mentoring and coaching. But the other piece that I heard about recently that I touched on was sponsoring. Recently. And I was like, I'm doing a lot of mentoring, but I haven't really sponsoring these young women. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't actually. What do you mean by sponsoring?
Well, if you hear about an opportunity within your company, hey, we're looking for someone with X, Y, and Z background. If that my mentee has that, I need to be speaking up more on their behalf, right? Or instead of just mentoring them one-on-one, making sure that the company knows about some accomplishments that maybe they aren't receiving accolades for that I think is impressive, making sure that I'm speaking up on their behalf, especially within the company. There's a difference between coaching and sponsoring. And I want to, focus more on the sponsoring aspect of it because I think I've been missing that a little bit, and how can I help my fellow females be successful in this role?
Well, I congratulate you for that. Obviously, that is what I want to do as well, but it's always a win-win. So, we're getting close to being out of time, but I would like to go back to something you mentioned earlier. And as I was saying, I want to give some really solid tips. And One thing you said is that you're good at negotiating. So I would love to have you give us a tip or two on effective negotiating when the customer wants something that you can't give, or they say the price is too high, whatever the objections. How do you handle that?
Sure, definitely. So, I've read a lot of books on negotiating. I've had my own personal experiences. I've attended, sales coaching where they talk about it. And, for me, it's all about give and take. And so before I go into a negotiation, I like to set the stage and get prepared before I have those discussions. What is it that they're going to want? I can usually figure out what they're going to want. So if I need to give there, what do I want? What does the company want? What do I want out of this negotiation? And kind of seeing it from both sides, because you don't want to negotiate against yourself. So you really have to understand and dig into what's going to be most important to them, and then what's important to me, and how can I marry those two? I don't like to be that hardball. This is it, take it or leave it. I have done that in some cases, but only in the appropriate times. But it is a partnership, and if you approach the whole sales cycle and negotiations as a partnership, those are usually the deals that are most enjoyable to work on and win. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Try to keep it as a partnership and think about what they want. What can I get from my company? And then I usually am able to make it work.
I really like that concept. It ties into your preparation, but being ready for different scenarios, and I'm sure with your experience, you start to realize what people are going to say they really have to have. And so you find ways to say, okay, I'm going to give you that, but you want this to be a win-win. I think that any decent customer understands that it is, like you said, a partnership. And, B2B sales is also P2P, right? Person to person. It's human. I think we can tell, your customer can tell when you have their best interest at heart, or if it's just something, you want to be the wolf of Wall Street, which who wants to buy like that? I always say, it's kind of like the golden rule. How do you want to be treated? So it sounds like you have great relationships with your customers, and the mentoring thing is huge. Good for you. That's, in some, not even a small way, changes the world. So good for you.
Something else that I, think about that I would, recommend or to young women in sales is, confidence is such a big piece of it. And I constantly have to work on my confidence, because sometimes you do feel a little insecure and vulnerable in situations. Like, no, you got to pull yourself out of that and be confident. In my early days, I let my results speak for myself. If I were looking to maybe get promoted into a leadership role, I was more on the quiet side, I would say, of the team, and just let my results speak for myself. And I did really well. I had a really amazing sales career, and I've learned along the way that in addition to results, you have to have a voice for yourself, and you have to make sure that you're being heard, and you have to ask for what you want. Don't sit back and wait for it to come to you. You have to go out and get it if you want it. I always tell my kids, if there's something you want, no one's going to plunk it in your lap. You need to go out and get it for yourself. Right. And so I kind of adopted that philosophy and would encourage young women to not only work hard and meet their goals, but also to have a really strong voice on the team, because you can get easily run over in a very male dominated industry. That's just how it is, unfortunately.
I totally agree. And as I've interviewed women, I've heard some really amazing stories about one woman, Rhonda White. She's the CEO of a company that does refrigeration. And she answered a want ad, really going back into the dark ages, and started part-time. And she's now CEO of the company. And it is a family. Well, they just sold, but it's a family company. And she described going into meetings, and even her mentor, who was a man trying to help her, he said, now, I recommend you don't really talk in this meeting. So I don't even know. And she's like, okay, I'm not following that advice. And another young woman I just talked to was at a trade show, she described, and the men, approached the sales reps who are men, and they want to know, they want to know about this product. And even the men are saying, well, you need to talk to her. and they fight that. So really, as women, yeah, we have to be assertive. We'll say assertive at really claiming our place at the table. And in my experience, and I'm guessing this is for you too, that once you establish a credibility, once you develop those relationships, I think men are happy to have the diversity. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Kay. I mean, my company I'm at right now, they are very diverse. It's one of the first organizations where I just really feel supported, and, encouraged to do really well. And yeah, I do think that some companies do really see the value in having diversity within a sales organization. I really do think that's important because women have a lot to bring to the table, not diminishing men in any way, but it's an equal opportunity for everyone to do really well for the company. And that's, the company I'm at today, I really feel supported in that way. And that's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. And shout out to the powers that be. I recently read Lori Richardson's book, She Sells, and she talks about building a corporate culture that welcomes women, makes women feel important. And it's a win for the company too, because women, we make great salespeople. And the other thing I was going to say before we close is that so many of the women I've talked to said they never meant to get into sales. So you have great advice. You might not think it's for you. And I think part of the problem is sales has such a bad rap because we think of the pushy, car sales person. I won't say salesman, but that's who it used to be, right? And this is such more of a helping your customer role. And, so it's very gratifying.
It is very gratifying. My daughter went into sales and, the one of the biggest, greatest things that I heard from her was, "Hey mom, I got the job and I told him you were my role model." I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Proud mom moment to say the least.
Cause it is a tough job. You might have to do a lot of travel. It could be long hours when you're trying to close a deal. And, I did it all for my family and being able to support them, honestly. And so it's worked out for me. And my goal is to intentionally get women into sales. Don't just fall into it like I did. Think about it seriously. And if you have the right characteristics and drive, you could be wildly successful. So it's amazing.
That is a great comment and place to end. You've given us some great inspiration. I love the things that you've talked about, the specifics, but also, the fact that even you, after all these years and being successful, you still have to pump yourself up, remind yourself of who you are and be your own cheerleader. So Fiona, I really appreciate your time. And I want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Kay. It was delightful. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Sales, your source for secrets you can use to make more sales. Check the show notes for links and contact information. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please spread the word by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. You can always learn more by going to uncopyablesales.com/podcast. Until next time, go out and supercharge your sales like a true uncopyable rock star.